Welcome to the new video. Today we will talk about my big mistake. Because you should admit your mistakes and learn something from them. You all know that last year I bought a new Beta 300 2022 which I was happy with and had no problems. Well, there were some small problems, but it was nothing that serious and it was not the reason for my sale. And I don't know the real reason either, but I decided to sell the Beta and buy a KTM X 2023. And let me say right away that the Beta was very easy to ride. When I sat on it for the first time I immediately felt good and safe, and it didn't take me long to get used to it. But with the KTM TPI, it took me a long time. More precisely about 50 hours to get used to it because the engine is quite aggressive and I didn't like it. That's why I had to do some modifications like the S3 low compression head to adapt the motorcycle to myself. While with the Beta, none of that was necessary. Since I always speak realistically, I have to say that the Beta has a better engine for enduro riding. But as far as the suspension is concerned, the KTM is better, and that is perhaps my only reason why I sold the Beta and switched to the KTM. But now if I could turn back time I'd stay on Beta. And I would suggest everyone to buy a Beta with Kayaba forks and shock because I tested that bike from a friend and it works very well, and I think it is a step above the KTM suspension. But the ZF forks that come on standard Beta are very bad. Sometimes they work very well, and then in the next terrain in the forest they work totally bad as if it is not the same suspension. While with KTM somehow it is better. Simply, the suspension on the KTM always works similarly no matter how much you change the terrain. As for me, my next bike is a Beta with Kayaba suspension. What do you think about that? But to be honest, Fantic 300 2024 also caught my attention. I don't like riders who are obsessed with one brand, but I like it more when people try and give a chance to new brands as well. There will always be KTM fans who attack all other motorcycles, but also against. It will never be clear to me, because I have ridden KTM, Sherco, Beta and many other motorcycles, and I cannot say that there is a perfect motorcycle that has no flaws. And I always say that every motorcycle has advantages and disadvantages, and that's normal, and it will always be like that. If I ride a Beta, why should I attack KTM and Sherco riders and tell them that their bike is bad and that they should buy a Beta? So please, let's not fight over unimportant things. With the Beta 300, I was not satisfied with the suspension. Because during the cross-country race, the rear shock absorber overheated and started to work very strangely, and the bike became soft. Later I found out that this problem can happen when the shock absorber overheats, and that the solution is to install a bladder in the shock absorber and solve this problem. The same problem can happen on KTM, but a lot more heat is needed. This problem happened to me for the first time in a race, so I couldn't fight for the first place as I have planned, so I finished on second place. And I was honestly a little disappointed in the Beta, and that was the trigger for me to sell it. But now, if I could turn back time, I wouldn't sell it. I would buy a bladder that costs about $100, and my problem would be solved. That's why I decided if I buy a Beta again, I buy it with Kayaba suspension which is ready to race. As you can see in the video, I ride very slowly over the jumps so I don't jump, because the ZF suspension is too soft for this riding style. In the forest, when you ride slowly, it is very good. But for fast racing like this, where you have to jump, it is completely unstable, and I can say that it is very dangerous, which can lead to a fall. The worst feeling is when you don't trust your suspension. You can't relax on the motorcycle and your result can't be the best. But don't get me wrong, the ZF suspension is not that bad. But it is simply too soft, so if you are a hobby rider, I think it will suit you perfectly, but for racing I just suggest Beta with Kayaba forks. I had no other problems with the Beta, and I am very sad that I sold it. You all know that Beta also has very bad plastics and that they break very easily, but I believe that there is a company that makes better plastics that are replacements. Beta is also known that crankshaft bearings can wear out very quickly. For some people they break while the engine is 10 hours old. which is very bad. And for some, those same bearings last over 400 hours, so there is no big rule. It all depends on how lucky you are. Beta also has small problems with electricity. Many riders complain that their dashboard stops working because water gets into it. But I wouldn't know that because I really haven't had those problems. If you have the beta and know some problems, you can share with us in the comments. So my main reason for selling the beta is that I had a problem with the rear shock absorber overheating, and that only happened once in a race. And now you will find out the reason why I regretted selling the beta. My biggest mistake is that I bought a KTM. I'm not saying it's a bad bike, but I just had bad luck with it. My friend had a broken piston and did a lot of damage to the engine. I didn't pay too much attention to that because I thought he had bad luck. After a few months, the same problem happened to another friend, and then I got a little worried. And I was wondering if it would happen to me too. Because I've seen that problem only happen on 2021 and newer models. And so the day came when the same problem happened to me. The piston broke and caused a lot of damage inside the engine. Simply put, everything had to be changed except the engine blocks. I uploaded a picture of what happened to me and later also uploaded a video on YouTube, and many riders contacted me with the same problem. Then I realized that this is a serious problem that KTM has. Especially anyone who has a Kymco cylinder on their KTM should beware of this problem and change the piston sooner than you think is necessary. A lot of riders have contacted me, and the strangest thing is that everyone's piston cracks in the same place, as if all engines have the same problem, which means that it's not a problem with the rider or that it went wrong, but that the KTM really has a problem. I believe that the problem is in the quality of the piston, and that KTM has been using slightly weaker materials for the last few years than it used to. Now, if it was their decision to sell as many spare parts as possible, I really wouldn't know how to answer. Or simply the market is disrupted and there are no quality materials for production. I wouldn't be able to say that either. But the fact is that some problem exists, and beware of this. And change your pistons before you think they need to be changed, so you don't experience the same problem as me and others. I am not saying that the KTM is a bad motorcycle, but I sold a beta that was perfect working, and then this happened to me with the KTM. And I think it would have been a better decision to have left the beta with me. But again, that's my opinion. Maybe even with the beta, it would have some big failure like I had on the KTM. I'm very sad that I didn't spend more time with the beta, and I think that I made a too hasty decision to sell without thinking too much, and that's the reason why I regret it. That's why I suggest you never make decisions when you are happy or angry. First, think carefully, cool down your emotions, and make a final decision.